And we are back. Great Lakes State Football, episode 37, talking everything football in the great state of Michigan. And I'm Vince.
And I'm Kory, and our co-host Bart Johansson is not with us tonight. He is at the Central Western Snow Bowl up in Mount Pleasant.
He is, if I can turn I don't know if this will be picked up on camera or not.
I got it right here.
He is right there. I got it. Yep. Brett is at that game where the screen is white because that's literally all snow. That is not a trick. That is not a trick on the camera. So yeah, Brett is not with us this week. His brother plays for Central Michigan, Cole, who we had on in a previous episode. So he is at the game, cheering him on, hoping Central gets a win. We'll be one game closer to a bowl if they can take this win. We're very excited for this episode. We do have a guest on. Unfortunately, the only thing we're going to be doing this episode is having a guest on with Brett out and Kory out of town for work. And actually, as a teacher, I got final exams this week. It's just been kind of a crazy week for all of us. So we're keeping this episode very short. We will be doing our high school and college picks for our games of the week off air, and we will post onto Twitter and Instagram our games of the week for both high school and college. We'll have 5 games that we'll pick for the semifinals, and then we'll have to see. There's not a lot of football left outside of.
I almost just say we pick all the semifinals and not any college.
I had suggested that. Yeah, because Michigan State don't have really a good game, and then Michigan's playing Illinois, but
we're missing the 3 MAC games.
Right, because they're all during the week. They're all MAC.
There's not even 5 games, really.
Right, and you got you got the playoff games. We do have Grand Valley, Ferris State, Davenport, and Alma.
Grand Valley's off.
Grand Valley got a bye. That's right, because they're the number 1 seed. Wow. So you got Ferris, Davenport, and Alma. Michigan game. The Lions. Again, we'll figure it out. Yeah. We'll pick our college and our high school games. And yeah, I wouldn't mind doing all the semifinal games and post them, but that would be 16 games. So I guess we would have to decide, the 3 of us decide off air if we want to post 16 game picks for the semifinals. We can. Why not? I don't know. But anyway, stay tuned. If you follow us on Instagram and Twitter, you'll see that stuff come out hopefully by Friday morning. We'll try to get that out when we can. But so for this episode, we are just going to be bringing you an interview here with a head varsity football coach. We're very excited to be chatting with Coach Gary Houghton, the head varsity football coach at Mason High School, who is returning to the semifinals for the 2nd straight season. They had a very surprise semifinal appearance last year, went 7-2 with a very young team, a lot of freshmen and sophomores on their varsity team, and they ended up making it all the way to the semifinals. Best season in school history, first 10-win season in school history, first regional championship in school history, and only the 2nd district championship in school history, if I remember correctly. And they followed it back up. They're sitting at 12-0. Again, best season in school history, built upon it, and they're right back with Detroit King, who beat them last year in the semis. They're matched up with them head-to-head again in the semis this year. So we'll be chatting with Coach Houghton about that here in just a moment. So I think with that, I think we can transition, Kory, unless you have anything you want to add. I think we can transition into the interview right now.
Ready to go, baby.
Good to go. All right. Stay on, and you will be listening to our conversation with Coach Houghton. Right after the interview's done, we will be chatting about a couple other things that we have. Going to go ahead and transition into the interview portion of the podcast here for episode 37. And we have a very special guest on tonight. We have the head varsity football coach at Mason High School, Gary Houghton. Coach Houghton took over in 2017 after Jerry Van Abel stepped down after being the coach for 26 seasons since 1991. Coach Houghton's in his 6th season as the Mason head football coach. In that time, he's gone 46-16. Last year in 2021, they had the best season in school history, going to the state semifinals with a 10-3 record. And this year, they followed it up with an even better record at 12-0, back in the state semifinals. Coach Houghton, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. And I'm sure, as I mentioned, you're enjoying this weather. I told Kory I didn't want to talk about it too much because this weather, man, you guys got to be pumped. There's nothing better than playing football in the snow, in my opinion.
It's great. I know the last 3 weeks have been kind of feel like you're kind of cheating with that 65, 70-degree
No
weather.
way.
It's like, this should not be happening, guys. But, now we're going to pay for it.
Hey, you just tell the kids the light at the end of the tunnel is you get to Ford Field, then you got great weather. You can play the
I was
controlled
gonna say
temperature.
you only
Yeah.
have one cold week. Well, two, I guess, if you count last
Hey,
week. So
this is it. Yeah, we'll make sure we're indoors practicing next week. That's for sure.
So before we get into this coming game, before we get there too quickly, just kind of want to talk about rewind a little bit and talk about your time here at Mason for a little bit. Obviously, coming off of a very successful tenure, Coach Van Avel stepped down in 2016, 2017 after 25, 26 years as the head football coach. What was that process like, taking over for a guy who had, basically built the Mason football program from the ground up and had quite a bit of success while doing it?
Yeah, well, I got my start under Coach Van Havel. He and I had kids about the same age, so our kids knew each other, and I got to know him. And I started out coaching with the Junior Bulldogs here in Mason, and I thought when that was over, that's it. I'll just kind of move on and go back to what I was doing. And he had mentioned that he wanted me to help out with middle school, so I did that for a few years, and then I became the freshman head coach after that. I didn't really see that coming. That just kind of happened. Did that for a few years, JV assistant, and then a varsity assistant, and then he retired. We really didn't see it coming. No one expected it. We used to joke that, you know, Jerry will stay here till he dies. He will never
One of
retire. He
those.
loved it. He loves
Yeah.
football. And he surprised everybody, in January 2017 when he retired. And they didn't post the job for a while. So, um, it took me a while to come to terms with the idea because I knew how much work goes into it. It really, it's a year-round job, as we know. Um, and it took me a few months to come to terms with the idea of, am I going to do this and try to get this job, or am I just going to wait and see if I can get on and stay on as an assistant? So, I finally threw my hat in the ring and got hired in May. Um, it was challenging first year. You guys see my record. Year one was 2-7. The cupboard was empty. We didn't have a quarterback when we started. Everybody graduated. It was a rough first year, and that doubt goes through your mind. Did they hire the right guy? And I just surrounded myself with really good assistant coaches and started getting involved in the Junior Bulldogs and the middle school and out in the community doing community service. And it slowly started to get some traction. We started getting more kids out, and we were able to do some work in the off season and start building. And, we slowly turned it around. In 2019, we had a great year, and we've just been climbing ever since.
Yeah, quite an impressive stretch. Obviously, as you mentioned, 2-7, not the ideal season that you wanted that first year, but right away improved by 3 wins to 5-4. Then you guys go 9-0. Even in the COVID year, had that 8-1 season in a shortened year, and then that last year, 10-3, best season in school history. Was that kind of something, that kind of a playoff run, something that you felt that group last year had in them, or was that playoff run last year kind of one of those things where those kids just got better and better and kind of, by the end of the season, wow, this is a team that maybe we can make a run just by how much improvement they've made?
Well, last year was such a young team. It was mostly sophomores. And we really felt like, this is a talented group, but they just don't have any experience and they're young. I mean, you know how it is when you put sophomores up against seniors. Physically, they're at a disadvantage.
Absolutely.
So, we kind of knew going into that year we would take our lumps early, and it took us a while to figure some things out. We had some guys out of position, and we finally figured out where everybody was best to help the team, and they would play their best. So it was about the time we played Jackson in 2021 when I thought we turned the corner and started playing like I thought we were capable of. So we were that team that just kept getting better. And I tell people we got good at the right time, and we really were hitting our stride about week one of the playoffs.
That's what you want.
We just never looked back. Yeah.
That's
I don't think
amazing.
they knew. Those kids are so young and inexperienced. They just didn't know to be afraid or to be. You know,
reckless abandon
yeah,
kind of
they just
situation.
didn't. Yeah, they just didn't know any better, and it wasn't until we ran into King that we were. That was a very senior heavy team from King in 2021, and obviously we were overmatched a little bit. So, um, you know, that was the outcome of the game. Is we put up a good fight. We got him in third and long several times, and Dante Moore just would come to life with that arm, and he would connect on I just several times. We were just looking at the film the other day, and we're like, man, we had these guys like third and 20, third and 25. Boom, he'd hit it. First down. And it just takes the wind out of your sails, and finally everything breaks, and they just started pounding, rolling the points up, and it just got away from us.
Talented quarterback can do that, obviously. And
Yeah,
going to
yeah,
Oregon, he's not
Yeah,
a slouch of a
5-star.
quarterback. But
yeah, yeah.
with that season coming to an end last year, a very tough loss, obviously, and not the ending you want, but obviously kind of a surprise getting to the semifinals, getting those kids playing where they were in that week one of the playoffs and just rolling. What was kind of the attitude going into the offseason with young guys like freshman quarterback last year is now a sophomore, Kason Carswell, has continued to have another great season this year, who I'm sure is just going to continue to get better and better, and only be a sophomore is very exciting. With that young group of freshmen, sophomores, and juniors coming out of that semifinal appearance last year, what was kind of the outlook and the approach with that group into this offseason?
Um, I think the whole attitude coming out of that season was they got a taste of it, and they really wanted to get back right where we are and get another chance at whoever they were going to see. We had no idea it was going to be King again. Um, but I think they felt like it kind of left a bad taste in their mouth that they had this great year and then got shut down the way they did, and they want to go further. And that was their attitude the whole year was we're going to go further this year. So we had a great off season, great lifting. Kids got bigger, stronger, faster. All those sophomores now look a lot different physically. They look a lot different. So that's really paid off this year. We won some games that, when you come into the season, you never anticipate we're going to go 12-0. That's just, things kind of have to go your way. But, um, the way things played out, now it kind of makes a little more sense when you look at how much our kids have changed and all the experience they have. They got all those extra practices and all those extra games in last year to get 13 games in.
Right.
That's paid off.
Coach, do you notice from this momentum that it's been helping your youth programs? Younger kids more excited, especially at Mason, smaller community, really tight knit community. I remember playing against Mason teams growing up, football, basketball, whatever it might be. It was always real tight knit. Same kids you're playing every year. There's not really any addition, subtraction. Have you noticed the younger leagues are kind of starting to like pick momentum up now that you guys are having such great success?
Yeah, there was a jump, and I stay pretty close to the people who run the Mason Junior Bulldogs, and I think we went from 100 and I thought they told me there was just over 100 kids in the Junior Bulldogs to now this year they were at 143 kids
Wow.
in the program.
That's good.
Yeah, it was a huge jump. And we even saw it in the middle school. We had 43 kids come out for seventh grade football, and 30, I want to say it was 35 kids come out for eighth grade football. So really good numbers. And then we haven't seen those numbers. And I kind of refer to two eras, the one being the concussion era and the other one being COVID.
Right.
Uh, these numbers are more like pre both of those. We're kind of seeing that rebound from COVID. And there was certainly, everybody saw a downturn in participation after
Yep.
everybody got freaked out about concussions. Parents were thinking, my kid's going to have CTE.
Oh,
That's a
jeez.
hard one with parents, and I tell them if I really believed that I was doing any harm to anybody's kids, I wouldn't be doing this job. I would not put anybody through that. So And I tell them, look, I played a long time ago. I played back in the 80s, and I still keep in contact with the guys I played football with, and nobody's having any problems. And our practices were a lot more
Yeah.
physical back then than they are now.
And the
And I
helmets
tell these guys,
I was
weren't
gonna
as
say
safe.
oh, you
you
could
can't even
part your
hit
hair
now
through them,
one day.
and I tell these guys, these kids don't believe me. I said, look, our practices were mostly hitting drills and conditioning. There wasn't a lot of fancy X's and O's. We
Right.
ran trap, counter, blast, and occasional some play action pass. We might only throw the ball 3 or 4 times a game. Everything is just, it was smash mouth.
Well, and people don't understand either that back then, football, especially high schools football, didn't start until typically mid-September because there was not really these crazy off-season lifting and strength and speed programs that there are now. Kids showed up for like 4 to 6 weeks of camp to get in shape. I
Yep.
talk with guys who played in, the 80s and 90s all the time. They're like, we weren't, some guys lifted weights. There were some who did, but it's not like it is now. Most of the time, the coach got you first week of August, and then for 4 to 6 weeks or whatever it was, we're getting in shape for the season. So it's a
Yeah.
much different approach, obviously, to
Yeah.
football now.
The off season is very, very different. And offense and defenses are much more complicated because you have more time with them.
Right.
Just like you said, I remember you had 2 weeks before we started double sessions where it was voluntary and you couldn't use a football. So the coach would throw out a soccer ball and we'd play soccer 3 or 4 nights a week. And it was goon soccer. It was not anywhere near what looks like organized soccer. It was just a bunch of guys knocking each other down, trying to put the ball in the goal. And that was how we got in shape.
Just conditioning and hitting each other, conditioning and hitting each other.
Getting to
And we
know
were
each
really
other.
good at hitting.
That's funny.
Well, before we get too off topic here, Kory, do you have anything else you want to throw Coach Houghton's way? Otherwise, we can get into the rematch here with King, the game at hand.
I want to hear the input on King. It's going to be a big one for you guys.
All
Like you
right,
said,
Coach. Well,
they took it to you, so
well,
rematch time.
well, I'll introduce it here. So obviously, last year you guys, as we already mentioned, had a tough loss to the state champs. Obviously, King went on to beat DeWitt in a pretty close game in the state championship at Ford Field last year. As you mentioned, a very senior. Obviously, Dante Moore was a junior last year, but he had a lot of senior teammates around him. So this year's King team has suffered some losses. They've shown that they can be beaten. I think they have 3 losses on the season. Obviously still play some tough competition, but go into this semifinal game, obviously a Mason Bulldog team that's a bit more experienced, stronger, bigger, and faster, as you mentioned. What are things looking like this week, Coach?
Well, obviously King still very, very talented. And when I refer to their guys, the only one that I know his name because I hear it all the time is Dante Moore. So when I refer to these other guys by their number, it's not meant as any disrespect. Their tailback, number 3, he's exceptional. Number 7, I believe he's already committed to Kansas. Number 4 and 6, I think those guys are committed somewhere already, Division 1. So I mean, they have like at least 4 guys that I can think of that are D1 commits. So they're an excellent team. They're outstanding. It's going to take our A+ effort to win this game, but I think we're capable of it. There's some things that we do well, and we're going to try to take advantage of that. King plays very downhill, very fast on defense. They blitz a lot. Our line's going to have to pick that up to give us a chance. And the one thing that is going to factor in is the weather. And we already know it's looking like a pretty significant snowstorm coming Thursday and Friday into Saturday morning. It's going to be in the mid-20s. Winds are going to be around 15 miles per hour. So, that mid-20s might feel more like upper teens, low 20s, something like that. I think the team that's able to handle the weather is going to have a distinct advantage.
I think that's tends to be an interesting factor about high school football, playoff football in the state of Michigan is you get to those regional final games. Sometimes, the district and regional finals have bad weather, but I feel like almost always you get to the semifinals. And sometimes it's just, who handles the weather better? Who's the mentally tougher team? Because everyone is on an even playing field when you got to deal with 20 degrees, windy, and snow. That the best quarterbacks, best running back, none of that matters anymore when you're dealing with that kind of weather. Can you out tough it? And can you be the tougher minded team? So I 100% agree with that on that one.
Completely agree. That's mental toughness is big, and the approach I've had all week, and the kids are buying into it. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Jocko Willink. He's a former Navy SEAL. He does a podcast.
So, yeah, I think I have. Yep.
So I have a military background. I was obviously not a Navy SEAL, but I can relate when I listen to these guys, talk about things about teamwork and dedication and, holding up your end of the deal. And it relates directly to football. And he has it's like a 2-minute video portion of one of his podcasts, and it's called Good. And he said, that was my approach when they'd say, hey, we didn't get this piece of equipment, or, we got a delay in a mission. He would say, good. That gives us more time to train, or that gives us an opportunity to find a solution to the problem. And this is going to make us better. And that's the way we've approached this idea of this weather, presenting these challenges. We can't change it. So let's just say good and go out and take advantage of that. And you can't complain about it because it's not going to change. You might as well have the approach of good. Let's go.
I love
you only
that
have
mindset.
To be tougher. You only have to be tougher for 60 minutes.
Right. Yeah, when it's over, we're gonna have a warm bus to get on.
Then you can be warm when it's all over, right?
And I told him, trust me, none of what you're feeling is gonna matter. If you win, it's all gonna go away.
Yep.
It's gonna be the best feeling.
The cold is temporary. The feeling of winning is forever. You're always going to remember that feeling.
That is a fact. Yep.
Well, Coach, I think that's probably a good place to end it here. Kory, got anything else you want to add? Otherwise, we'll let Coach Houghton get back to prepping for King here.
Good luck this week, Coach. Give him
Thank
hell.
I appreciate that. We will do that.
Coach, good luck. Thanks for coming on. We appreciate your time and look forward to watching. I can't wait to see clips of that game in the snow. I'm going to try and watch it on the NFHS network and see if I can catch some of that game.
It should be a lot of fun. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Absolutely. If you're listening, please stay on. We're going to wrap up the episode in just a second. Hope you enjoyed our conversation there with Coach Houghton, the head varsity football coach at Mason High School. Good luck to Coach Houghton and the Mason Bulldogs this weekend as they take on Detroit King in a big-time rematch in the Division III semifinals. We'll be watching and following along that game. Speaking of which, good luck to all of the high school football teams playing in the semifinals this weekend. As we just talked about with Coach Houghton, going to be some wild weather. They're projecting up to a foot of snow in some places.
Holy smokes.
Through Friday morning, and into the day on even into Saturday morning, I believe. There's a chance of snow all the way up into Saturday morning, and some places are projecting up to a foot of snow. So going to be interesting to see how that affects some of these teams. As we talk about with Coach Houghton, you get into weather like that, it really doesn't matter how talented you are. It just comes down to who's the most mentally tough, who handles the weather the best, and who's the most prepared, really well coached helps. Kory, it looks like Kory must be looking at the weather projections right now.
Pardon me, I'm in Chicago all week and I have to drive home tomorrow, and we are supposed to get 6 to 10 inches of snow.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting weekend for football, that's for sure. So
thank God I have a Subaru.
Additionally, we got playoff football this weekend. Grand Valley's on a bye, number 1 seed in their region for D2 football playoffs. They get the bye. The number 2 seed, Ferris State, and Davenport is the number 5 seed, and they are playing, I believe, right? Davenport is at Ferris State, first round of the playoffs. So that is a rematch of, I think, last week. Didn't they just
Yeah.
play? Yeah, literally last week, which is I feel like what usually happens with Ferris and Grand Valley. Usually they're the ones that get paired up. But yeah, that'll be an interesting game, especially up in Big Rapids, because the weather up there is usually pretty crazy. Grand Valley and Ferris State played in crazy snow-ridden weather up there last year in the playoffs. So that'll be
And
interesting. Alma.
Davenport played Ferris fairly tough. It was 28-21 up in Big Rapids 2 weeks ago, and then Davenport just got thumped by Grand Valley, so they might be coming
Right.
out with a little bit of vengeance.
Right. It'll be interesting. So yeah, oh no, that was 2 weeks ago they played Ferris. They played Grand Valley last week. Okay, so it's been 2 weeks. And then Alma obviously hosting I can't remember who they're hosting first round. Mount St. Joseph. Mount St. Joseph, who is also undefeated. That's the interesting part about the D3 playoffs is a lot of the teams that get in are undefeated or only have one loss because it's essentially all the conference champions get an at-large bid, and then all the conference champions get automatic bids, and then the at-large bids tend to be the other teams that just had like one loss. the next ranked teams.
Which makes no sense that Albion didn't get in, but
yeah, I'm very confused about Albion not getting in as an at-large bid.
They lost
at 9-1,
the number 2 seed in their region,
and a team who's ranked in the top 25 in the nation.
Interestingly enough, though, Mount St. Joseph, I was texting you guys this, is actually ranked higher in the coaches poll than Alma. So Alma has the better regional ranking at 2, but Mount St. Joseph is ranked 21 in the country in the coaches poll versus Alma at 22.
Yeah, I don't understand how the regional ranking stuff works for Division 3 because the D2 playoffs are there's no automatic bids in D2 playoffs. 28 teams make the playoffs, and it's the top 7 from each region, and it's a committee. It's an NCAA organized committee that uses different factors to determine the regional rankings. Whether you win the conference and your conference record does not matter at all. From what I've read in D2 playoffs, a big factor is your opponent's win percentage. So the teams that you are playing, are they winning a lot of games? Apparently that's one of their big determining factors that they use for creating the regional rankings in D2. I don't know how the D3 regional rankings, I've never really looked into it because they have the automatic bids. The regions to me seem almost arbitrary, I guess, because I don't know what is there's something like 20 something D3 conferences. So you have more than 20 teams that get in, and then just to fill out that 32 team playoff bracket, there's only like 10 to 12 at-large teams, I think.
And we've talked about that, how Division 3 is so large. I mean, there's so many teams that
300 there's 300 and something football teams in D3. It's the biggest division in all of college football.
And they already only played 10 games, so I don't think you can necessarily make their season shorter and then figure it out. But yeah, I mean, you kind of have to do the at-large thing because if there's 20 some odd conferences and 300 teams, you can't. Or the conference championship thing. It just puts you in a weird spot. D3 is messy.
It is, yeah, because it'd be one thing if you had 32 conferences, that would make it more convenient, but there's not. So there's a weird number that get in as an at-large, and typically what happens is the Wisconsin conference always gets 2 teams in. One of they did this year. They have 2 teams, and I think it's Whitewater and La Crosse, I think are the 2 that got in. Usually Mount Union's conference, usually the runner-up in Mount Union's conference gets in 2. And then I know the Texas conference with Mary Hardin Baylor, usually the runner-up in that conference gets in. I know those are 3 teams right away that are pretty much always 3 of the at-large bids because those are like the 3 toughest D3 conferences. Inarguably, because all the national champions come from those
3, yeah.
And mostly.
I didn't catch this, but did any 2-loss teams get in over Albion?
There's a 4-loss team that's in.
Region?
I texted you this. I think it is in the region.
Yes, you did.
It's the conference champion from that conference that Finlandia is in.
Oh boy.
They went 6-4. They went 6-0. They lost all 4 of their non-conference games. There's only 7 teams in their conference. So they went 6-0 in their conference, and they're the conference champs and got into they'll get absolutely crushed. They'll get absolutely crushed.
And I get that the MIAA has a history of just not being great in playoff play, but It's just
Yeah, but they also almost always get paired up with Whitewater or Mount Union,
they
or
are
one of
this year.
the conferences, or one of the teams from last year was Wisconsin lacrosse. So the other Wisconsin team, they always get screwed and have to play a really tough opponent round one. Trine is the only one in the last 10 plus years who has made 15 years who has made out of the first round. But I think those years that they won one or two playoff games, they had a favorable matchup. Favorable draw.
And Albion beat one of the Wisconsin teams this year. So it's like
they did. Eau Claire,
Yeah.
Wisconsin Eau Claire.
Yeah.
So that to me was and they went to Wisconsin. They were on the road. So I don't know how much more Albion could have done or the MIAA to get an at-large bid. I just
exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. Very disappointed that they didn't get an at-large bid. But anyway, I think that's about it. I don't really think we have anything else to chat about. We're not going to talk about our games from last week because we don't have Brett on. Trying to keep this episode a little bit shorter this week. And as I said, Brett, Kory, and I will make sure we have our picks for games of the week for high school and college posted within the next day or two here of the time of you listening. And stay tuned for next week. Looking forward to getting into state championship preview. We'll do a preview of that next week. We'll probably have on. We'll look to either have it on Goose Poop or Tate Baker, or maybe both. We'll see to preview the state championship games. And we'll go from there. Thank you for listening. If you like what you listened to and or watched, please follow us on Twitter at GLSF Ball. Follow us on Instagram, Great Lakes State Football. Make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube if you like the video version episodes of the podcast, Great Lakes State Football. Please download, if you like the audio episodes, the episodes off of Apple, Spotify, your favorite podcast store. And lastly, if you want to support us, you could always just Venmo us money. We do have what's the account? A PayPal account in our links, Venmo in our link tree. In the description box for the episode, you will find, as we mentioned in the previous episode, a link to the it's so hard for me to say it. NeuroPeak Pro. It's a tongue twister. NeuroPeak Pro Intel belt. That was something we discussed about in last week's episode. So they are our affiliate sponsor that we locked down a couple weeks ago. So we're very excited about that. You get 20% off if you check out with GLSFB. Although if you click the link in the description of our episodes, it will take you right to that discount code and checkout. As we mentioned in last week's episode, it is a little bit of a pricey purchase, but it is one that we believe, for an athlete or a team, a sports team coach looking to find an advantage for multiple athletes or to get a head up on an opponent, could be the determinant factor in some success in terms of that small little extra step that you need to get you another boost. An aspect, breathing, as it works on breathing and stress management. It's an aspect of sports training that's fairly new and groundbreaking. So thank you. Appreciate all support. I'm Vince with just Kory this week. No Brett. Great Lakes State Football, episode 37. Go Green. Go Chargers. Go Comets.
Go Timberwolves. I'm a new coach.